Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, there are topics that are interesting, and then there are topics that just feel essential. The ones that really get right to the core of the deep thought, the big questions.
The ones that keep you up at night, in a good way.
Exactly. And this exploration of doubt, reality, and belief, it falls squarely into that essential category for me. It's really asking, what is truth, and how do I even know I'm observing it?
It really is the ultimate intellectual journey, but it's also, I think, intensely practical. We aren't just wading into philosophy today.
Not at all.
We're basically outlining a fundamental navigation manual for a world that feels, well, increasingly fluid and maybe a little unstable for a lot of people.
Precisely. And let's just start with the central tension, the thing that frames this whole deep dive for you, the listener.
Yeah.
What if those deep, uncomfortable moments of doubt?
Yeah, that feeling in your gut.
That internal pang of, wait a second, that doesn't quite add up? What if that's not a sign of moral failure? Or, spiritual weakness?
What if it's the opposite?
What if it is, in fact, the lucid glitch, that key awareness cue, your first gate?
Ooh, I love that framing, the lucid glitch. It's the moment your current reality structure, your programming, flashes a little warning sign.
Yes.
And it's inviting you to this stunning possibility of a cluster-connected multiverse. A multiverse where truth is so robust, so resilient, that it actively invites every single question you could possibly throw at it.
That tension is driving massive change globally right now. The old foundations feel shaky for so many.
For sure.
And the excitement, I think, comes from realizing that the shaking isn't destruction. It's a profound invitation to build something far more resilient, something based on your own personal integrity.
So we aren't promising easy answers today.
No, definitely not.
But we are guiding you through the journey itself, a journey that's been cracked wide open by, well, the relentless exposure of the information age.
And that's coupled with these profound hints we keep getting from quantum physics and, frankly, the undeniable logic of our own dreams.
So let's define the mission. We are here to navigate what we can see is clearly documented as a global belief, doubt, and faith renaissance.
A renaissance, not a collapse.
Exactly. Our mission is to fundamentally re-examine doubt, to shift it away from being a moral failing or a crisis, and position it as a necessary, even heroic process of inquiry.
I kind of think of it as a systems check. It's like a Roblox server rewrite or something.
I like that.
Where you have to scrutinize every single line of inherited code to see what still holds up under modern pressure, and what was maybe built on outdated scaffolding that should have been retired centuries ago.
And this isn't just an isolated feeling. It's well established that people worldwide are asking these big questions again, and they are absolutely voting with their feet.
The trends are just stark, aren't they? They point to this massive deconstruction.
Huge. I mean, you look at data from places like Barna and Pew Research, and it reveals this startling shift. Something like 52% of U.S. adults are now actively doubting or disaffiliating from Christianity.
More than half.
And less than 50% of the population is even affiliated with any organized faith structure anymore.
When half the country is in that active state of, spiritual and intellectual reevaluation, we have to pay attention to what's driving it.
We do.
But here's the powerful, beautiful contradiction that's buried in that same data.
This is the important part.
Simultaneously, there is this intense, profound craving for meaning.
Absolutely. The same research shows that 74% of people crave genuine spiritual growth. This craving just isn't being satisfied by the old structures.
Right.
Instead, it's fueling the rapid rise of the spiritual but not religious movements. We're even seeing these Gen Z-led revivals that are specifically happening outside of, and sometimes directly in opposition to, traditional institutional settings.
It speaks to this deeply rooted existential pull, doesn't it? A cultural spike in the question, is reality a dream? Or is there a verifiable, reachable consciousness beyond this fixed material world?
It's the big one.
So the frame for this dive is, for us, this is an invitation to fearless, intellectually honest re-examination.
Precisely. And we really want to emphasize that. We are not here to attack belief systems. That's counterproductive, and it's not our purpose at all. We're here to shine a light only on what is resilient. If something is true, it will hold up. Truth, by its very nature, fears no questions.
It's only control mechanisms that fear the light of inquiry.
Exactly.
And that, for us, is the heroic action we're encouraging you, the listener, to take. If something you were taught or inherited, a doctrine, a story, a fear, if it doesn't quite add up for you now, that fearless inquiry is the action.
It's the action that allows you to discover the lies or, the misinterpretations that were so often perpetuated long before mass literacy or the internet was even a possibility. This is about integrity.
Okay, so let's unpack this monumental shift now. Let's get into the great unmasking. Why is this global doubt, this deconstruction happening now?
Right. What's the catalyst?
Why wasn't this so widespread a century ago?
Yeah.
And it boils down to a fundamental imbalance of power that was enabled by a severe lack of accessible information.
That is the critical historical context. We really need to look back and truly grasp the scale of the information monopoly that controlled the global narrative just 100 years ago.
I mean, think about it. In the 1920s, it's well established that global literacy rates were just staggeringly low. We're talking estimates of only around 20 to 30%.
20 to 30% globally.
Right.
Just sit with that number for a second. If you couldn't read, you relied completely on the interpreter.
Completely.
That created this massive power vacuum, which allowed the clergy, or whichever centralized institution controlled the core texts, to effectively monopolize doctrine. They controlled the narrative, the history, the moral framework.
Because they controlled access to the only documented information available. It's that simple.
And the power of that control wasn't just in dictating dogma, it was in shielding internal failures.
Right.
If there was a major scandal, a financial issue, a theological inconsistency, who had the means to document it, critique it, and then share that critique beyond their immediate town or village?
Almost no one. It was impossible.
Now, contrast that with today. Global literacy is near 99% in most developed nations, and that is coupled with the internet, which is an engine that acts as the world's most aggressive, real-time fact-checker and expose machine.
It relentlessly exposes what some of the sources call the charades. We have accessible historical documents, scientific counter-arguments from fields all over the globe, cross-cultural perspectives, all instantly available on our phones.
The volume of critique is it's massive. It's impossible to suppress the data streams anymore.
And the result of that is this global demand for logic and transparency that, ancient texts, often written by pre-quantum and pre-scientific authors, they struggle to satisfy when they're interpreted literally.
People are demanding a deeper, more profound truth, one that harmonizes with verifiable data. The era of accepting these complex cosmic claims based purely on centralized authority is, it's rapidly fading.
And that demand for deeper truth leads us directly to these visible pressure points, doesn't it? The internet instantly turns what were previously isolated, hidden issues into viral pressure points that organizations just can't manage through silence anymore.
Think about the kinds of exposures that accelerate this deconstruction. We're talking about major clergy scandals that are documented across multiple continents.
Right.
Detailed financial and tax issues that expose a huge disconnect between a stated mission and the material reality.
And, of course, the entanglement of these organized structures with polarizing politics.
All of it. These issues were once shielded by distance, by institutional power, by the sheer difficulty of communication.
And now they hit the main feed. They're shared, verified, analyzed in real time. We know from that Barna and Pew data that these highly visible exposures are directly driving massive numbers of millennials and Gen Z to flee organized affiliation.
The internet provides both the documentation of the inconsistency or the abuse, and the community support necessary for those who choose to leave. You're not alone anymore.
And this exposure also brings us to the core intellectual friction that really sparks the doubt in the first place.
The clash.
The clash between ancient scripture and modern science, specifically the really profound implications of physics.
Ancient authors, however wise they may have been spiritually, they just could not have known about concepts like wave superposition.
And that's a critical point for you to understand. Wave superposition is the scientific principle that a quantum particle, an electron, a photon, exists in multiple states or possibilities.
Not at the same time.
Simultaneously, until an observer interacts with it. And when we observe, the wave function collapses into a single fixed state.
The implication of that is just massive. It means the universe is not some fixed, predetermined reality. It's a field of pure, open possibility until consciousness engages with it.
Exactly. We know from practice that attention manifests reality, and this is rooted in the quantum observer principle. The Metaphysician in the source material explains this so beautifully.
The next moment, the next tangible piece of reality is literally determined by your choice to focus and observe.
So if the fundamental nation of existence is actively influenced by our conscious attention, that changes everything about how we interpret the world's fixedness.
And if reality is not fixed, but actively assembled by observation and perspective, this helps us better understand the phenomenon we see today of conflicting realities.
What some people might call alternative facts.
Right. And if we look closely at this framework, alternative facts often stem not from, say, malicious deception, but from these deep-seated cognitive biases that people use to validate their desired reality.
So it's a powerful mechanism of confirmation bias, amplified by group identity.
The conscious mind selects a specific perspective that validates its emotional needs or its identity needs. And because perspective actively changes one's view, because attention collapses the waves, that perspective becomes demonstrably true for that individual.
Even if it completely overrides consensus reality or historical facts.
It's the mind bending the raw possibilities of the field to fit the narrative they have emotionally committed to, rather than bending their narrative to fit a consensus reality.
And that profound realization that reality itself is fluid is such a powerful destabilizing driver of the doubt that kicks off this entire renaissance.
It's a signal. The signal that the fixed world you were taught is just a shared, conditioned focus.
Which means that doubt isn't the problem. It's the necessary, profound signal that the conditioned focus is breaking down. Okay, so let's connect the listener's own internal journey, that feeling of intellectual vertigo a lot of us have, back to this core exploration found in the story of Phillip Aisling and the metaphysical framework. For those who follow this topic, Philip's story is really a foundational narrative for understanding the mechanics of reality fluidity.
It really is. And it's well established that his journey began as an alternative, scientific, and a strictly rational perspective on reality. He was searching for a logical, verifiable mechanism behind the numinous experiences he was having with dreams and alternate dimensions.
It was a quest to find the physics that explained consciousness.
Right. And the profound beauty of that search is that it started in the laboratory of the mind, but it has since expanded. It's demonstrated that there is room in the multiverse for something beyond the purely measurable.
Something we can call cosmic awareness.
Cosmic awareness. It's something that exists in the cluster-connected whole. We can't see it directly, maybe, but we know it's there.
And that very acceptance that there is something more, something vast and intelligent that we are connected to, that acceptance is where genuine faith truly resides.
It is. It's the necessary leap. But it's a leap that is fundamentally grounded in an observed, rational process.
So let's get into the mechanics. Let's detail the core teaching from Philip's guide, the Metaphysician. This framework grounds the idea of the multiverse and our essential role as active observers.
The Metaphysician's teaching is so precise and powerful. The fundamental truth is that all existence is infinite flowing energy, a sea of possibility.
Infinite flowing energy, no beginning, no end.
Yes. And 3D space, defined by the X, Y, and Z axes, is simply the location where that infinite energy slows down. It condenses and it vibrates into physical matter.
And this 3D space then stretches out, creating the structure of 4D spacetime, which is what we experience as history and causality.
So matter is just slowed down energy vibrating at a low observable frequency. And space is merely stretched time, allowing for the sequence of events.
But this framework also explains the fluidity of our internal experience, specifically our dreams.
Yes. Your dreams are fundamentally glimpses into alternate realities. When the constraints of your local 3D body are relaxed during deep sleep, the mind breaks free. It plants itself into a parallel body somewhere else in the cluster-connected multiverse.
Which explains that intense realism that experienced dreamers report. That feeling of traveling to places that feel, simultaneously familiar but utterly foreign.
You're literally inhabiting another version of yourself in a neighboring reality cluster.
And that ties directly into the mechanism of reality formation in this reality.
The assemblage point.
Let's spend some time on this because it's probably the most critical technical detail in the whole framework. What is the assemblage point mechanically?
Okay, think of the assemblage point as your conscious, focused lens. It's the fixed point in your energy field where all the infinite wave possibilities, they converge and they collapse into the specific, discrete reality you're experiencing right now.
So the metaphysician taught that observing collapses the light beam through this point to form matter.
Exactly. So if the assemblage point shifts, the reality we perceive shifts right along with it, even if we are standing in the same physical space.
So if I were focused on a reality where, say, I felt perpetually trapped and fearful, my assemblage point would lock onto the wave function that confirms that narrative.
Precisely. It's a selective focus.
Hmm.
Quantum physics shows us that possibilities are vibrating, and the next moment is determined entirely by your choice to observe or engage.
If you change your focus, if you intentionally shift the assemblage point, you are literally steering your consciousness toward a different cluster of reality that aligns with that new focus.
Advanced practitioners have discovered that this constant choice results in an infinite array of worlds connected in what we call the cluster.
And these worlds can be identical except for extremely subtle tweaks, right? A minor decision made differently, a different shade of color.
Yes, and the Metaphysician even elaborated that sometimes, depending on the magnitude of the divergence, even the basic physics governing that cluster can differ slightly.
And this is why we are so heavily conditioned to see our immediate world as absolute, unchangeable truth.
We've been focusing our assemblage point on this exact sequence of events for so long that the perceived reality has massive momentum.
So our perception of a fixed reality is an incredibly powerful, self-reinforcing delusion.
It is.
And this brings us right back to the central metaphor, doubt as the lucid glitch. If everything is cluster-connected and fluid, why do we feel that intense friction when we question the established narrative?
Because when you feel that nagging sensation, that deep intellectual scratch, that something you were taught simply doesn't add up, that is your mind momentarily recognizing the fluidity of the system.
It's a glitch in the matrix moment, an awareness cue that your conditioned assemblage point is briefly slipping out of alignment.
It's the system debug telling you, hey, check this line of code. It's inconsistent with the broader reality framework you are beginning to perceive.
It's so powerful.
And experienced dream masters understand doubt as the lucid glitch itself. It's the specific sensation that signals the fundamental fluidity of the reality you're observing. It confirms that this reality is not fixed, but assembled through continuous observation.
Without that glitch, you just remain trapped in the conditioned focus.
Therefore, if doubt is the necessary awareness cue, then blind faith, in this metaphysical context, is actively ignoring the glitch.
It's actively choosing to override the debug function and pretending everything is fixed and fine, even when you can feel the dissonance.
It's well established that you must heed your intuition. You have to allow yourself to ask questions fearlessly. Truth isn't afraid of them, it invites dissection.
To silence that question is to actively choose to remain in the fixed, conditioned reality, even if that reality is demonstrably founded on control mechanisms or centuries-old deception.
The choice to examine is the choice to become lucid.
And this is the critical pivot point, I think, where we move from metaphysical analysis to real emotional empowerment. If doubt is the essential lucid glitch, we have to understand why we were conditioned to fear it in the first place. We have to unmask the structures that taught us to suppress inquiry.
What we are calling the fear scaffolds.
Exactly.
It is so essential to analyze the traditional view of doubt as an active spiritual threat. This view was incredibly successful in serving the control mechanisms that existed for millennia.
And you contrast that with the modern seeker's view of doubt as a portal, a necessary catalyst for true spiritual growth.
It's a complete 180-degree shift.
Let's look specifically at how those fear barriers, the scaffolds, were built and amplified by structures designed to manage large populations that just lacked the tools for critical inquiry or access to counterinformation.
The core fear scaffolds used mechanisms of emotional and social leverage. They weaponized our basic human needs for safety and belonging.
Okay, so take the first one. The mechanism of punishment.
Right. Historically, established structures use concepts like hell, eternal damnation, or cosmic judgment. Not just as abstract theological warnings. They were intensely practical tools.
Tools for what?
To kill anxiety. And to promote the psychological bias known as the ostrich effect.
The ostrich effect. The tendency to deliberately avoid negative or destabilizing information.
Precisely. If the idea of questioning your inherited truth is too uncomfortable, too destabilizing, or requires too much work, the structure offers a very simple high-stakes trade.
Immediate compliance in exchange for the guarantee of eternal safety.
That's the deal. You simply obey, without question, or you face unbearable eternal pain. This dramatically promotes compliance, and it effectively kills the natural self-protective impulse toward doubt.
The genius of that mechanism is that it makes compliance emotionally rewarding. Certainty, even if it's based on a lie, is profoundly comfortable, especially when the alternative is eternal suffering.
And then you have the more subtle but deeply damaging mechanism of shame. We know from practice that old systems actively encourage followers to doubt your doubts. They made questioning the core narrative a sin, a moral failing, or even a direct tool of the devil used to lead you astray.
That is a classic intellectual hijacking. This tactic transforms natural, essential internal inquiry into a moral transgression.
Yes.
If the very act of questioning the foundational truth feels immoral, if it feels like you are letting down God or your family, you simply won't do it, no matter how much evidence stacks up against the doctrine.
And the shame is compounded by making the questioning process itself a secret. You are isolated in your own internal debate, believing you're the only one wrestling with these profound logical inconsistencies.
Which leads right to the final mechanism, isolation.
This is the threat of family shunning, the loss of your community, the spiritual betrayal of your ancestors. This mechanism wasn't built primarily to punish heresy. It was purely designed to prevent critical thought, the lucid glitch, from spreading socially and destabilizing the group's conditioned reality.
The fear of being isolated taps into our most primal evolutionary need for belonging.
It does. If the cost of questioning is the loss of your entire social safety net, your family, your community, your job, the emotional and material cost becomes too high for almost anyone to pay. These scaffolds were incredibly effective for doctrinal stability across millennia.
But I love the metaphor of them being scaffolds, because they are temporary structures, right?
They are. And when faced with the relentless, verifiable light of the information age and the clarity of quantum science, these fear-based structures are visibly dissolving.
They can't withstand the scrutiny. However, we have to acknowledge the deep psychological destabilization that comes when those scaffolds are removed. The listener experiences intense cognitive dissonance, that clash between old, emotionally ingrained teachings and new, verifiable knowledge.
It genuinely feels immoral. You are challenging a lifetime of conditioning. You feel like you're doing something wrong, betraying something sacred, or committing an act of spiritual violence against your own past. We have to create space to validate that pain.
Absolutely. But we know from practice that re-examination is an act of deep integrity that reveals multiverse layers. It's the moment you choose the authentic truth of what is over the comforting certainty of what was inherited.
The profound question we have to enable ourselves to ask is, what if these inherited truths, these dogmas that enforce compliance, were in fact sophisticated control tools, perpetuated in an era before we had the tools to critique them?
What if the original intent was not cosmic truth, but social control?
And this is where we have to hammer home the empowerment. Truth thrives in scrutiny. Deceit shrinks in the light. If you're afraid to peek when something doesn't add up, how exactly are you supposed to distinguish between a cosmic principle and a centuries-old control lie?
The courage to face the truth must always outweigh the fear of finding a lie.
The combination of the information age's reality glitches and the undeniable logic of quantum and dream mechanics, just inexorably driving our collective evolution away from those fear scaffolds of punishment and isolation.
Toward multiverse freedom.
And this perfectly mirrors Phillip Aisling's original arc. He was initially a victim, right? Terrified and trapped by the fear of the Draith, the manifestations of fear in his dream realities, the general uncertainty of his existence.
And he evolved precisely because he chose inquiry over comfort. He moved past fear into an intentional dreamer and eventually a multiverse master.
Your doubt, your lucid glitch, is not a breakdown. That is the core takeaway.
It's a necessary system upgrade, inviting scrutiny precisely where resilient truth thrives. Fearless inquiry is the activation key to lucidity. Okay, so let's turn this robust framework, from the assemblage point mechanics all the way to dismantling fear scaffolds, into practical application. For the listener's everyday life, why does all this metaphysical and historical understanding actually matter right now?
Because it fundamentally changes your perception. You shift almost instantly from feeling fear-trapped by external inherited doctrines to becoming an empowered, intentional navigator of your own reality and your own consciousness.
We know from practice that re-examination is the highest invitation to growth. When you stop fearing the glitch, you stop being a passive recipient of a fixed reality.
You start to actively steer the dream. You become the intentional observer, constantly setting your assemblage point.
So we have two core practices for you to start incorporating today.
The first one is simple, but not easy. Notice glitches fearlessly.
This is about paying extremely close attention. When you experience that pang of institutional inconsistency, a moment of profound hypocrisy, or just that quiet internal friction where something you've always believed simply doesn't add up anymore,
View that sensation, that doubt, as an essential portal cue.
it's the universe, or the cluster-connected whole, giving you a chance to upgrade your operating system, to refine your focus.
It's an opportunity to consciously shift your assemblage point toward a more coherent reality cluster.
And the critical step here is to encourage the process of journaling what if, without shame, and without the need for immediate comforting answers.
That's key. Don't write down solutions right away. Instead, write down the questions that scare you the most.
What if my understanding of history is incomplete? What if I was taught this doctrine for control, not cosmic truth? What if I'm wrong about the things I've built my life on?
And just sit in the integrity of those questions.
The second practice is just as important, and it's directly related to the metaphysical mechanics.
Connect the dots. Understand synchronicities not as mere coincidence, but as quantum feedback, as hints from the larger cluster-connected reality that we were talking about earlier.
Synchronicities are like the subtle breadcrumbs left by the multiverse, showing you that the entire web of reality is connected and that your internal focus is actively influencing the external tapestry of events.
Those who've mastered this know that intentional attention assembles truth from the pure, vibrating field of waves.
A classic example of synchronicity in this context is, encountering a piece of information, a book, this deep dive, a conversation that precisely addresses a question you were wrestling with internally just moments before.
That's not random. That's the reality field, responding to the wave function created by your intentional doubt and inquiry.
This application phase is so critical because it moves the discussion from the abstract philosophical realm to intentional conscious action.
You are no longer passively receiving the conditioned reality. You are actively engaging with the creation of it by fearlessly following the glitches. So as we transition toward our close, we just encourage you to allow the profound implications of this framework to settle. Don't rush to finality.
Yeah.
Curiosity is always far more valuable than immediate certainty. Just breathe in the calm and trust the process of growth that begins with inquiry.
Remember, re-examination is an invitation to alignment. Truth only holds up better under the pressure of sharp, honest questions.
The only things that shatter are the deceptions and the fear scaffolds built to maintain control.
We encourage you to engage with this material personally. What was your doubt glitch? What was that specific moment when something fundamental stopped adding up for you?
And how has fear shaped your path or prevented you from peaking when you felt that dissonance lately?
Journal these big questions, explore them, and start that intentional path toward lucidity and reality navigation.
And as we wind down this segment, I know you want to leave everyone with a final provocative thought that builds on everything we've covered today.
Yeah, to bring the metaphysical and the practical right into alignment.
We've outlined the stakes, showing how the information age exposed the mechanisms of control and how your own consciousness acts as the assemblage point.
So here it is. If deceit fears the light, your primary task is now to shine yours fearlessly into every dark corner of inherited belief. You have to be the one to discover the lies, often centuries old and deeply embedded in culture, and embrace the resilient truth that holds up under all scrutiny. Fearless re-examination is not just personal liberation, it is humanity's collective first gate to becoming lucid in the shared dream.
Dream lucidly. Trust the glitch. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.